If you ever wondered what would happen if the most brooding man in comics had to share panel space with the most annoying man in comics, 2025 is finally here to answer you. Batman and Deadpool are about to collide. Not once, but twice. Two companies, two one-shots, two completely different creative visions, and one very loud cultural event. Stay strapped in, because by the time we're done, you'll understand why this bizarre mashup matters, why it's happening in such a strange way, and why it might actually be brilliant instead of a train wreck. So let's start with the facts. Marvel fires the opening shot with Marvel DC Deadpool Batman #1 on September 17th, 2025. It's being billed as the crossover you never expected but always wanted, which is basically marketing's way of saying, we know this is chaos, but you're going to pay for it anyway. Zeb Wells is writing, Greg Capullo is drawing, and the pitch is simple. Wade Wilson finds himself in Gotham. The Joker's cooking up something big, and suddenly, Batman has to team up with a mercenary whose internal monologue never shuts up. That's your spine, but Marvel isn't stopping there. The issue comes stacked with backup stories that's read like the world's strangest dinner party seating chart. Daredevil with Green Arrow, Captain America with Wonder Woman, Jeff the Land Shark with Crypto the Superdog, and even an Old Man Logan vs. Dark Knight Returns Batman fight drawn by Frank Miller. These aren't teasers. They're little experiments in tone, showing you what happens when Marvel grit or absurdity meets DC archetypes. 2 months later, on November 19th, DC responds with Batman Deadpool #1. Different order in the title, different vibe entirely. This time, it's Grant Morrison writing and Dan Mora drawing, which should already tell you the mood will be cosmic, metaphysical, and just a bit unhinged. While Marvel's entry feels like a classic buddy cop movie where one cop wears a cape and the other talks to the reader, Morrison has taken things into stranger territory. Reality bends, characters realize they're fictional, and Deadpool's habit of breaking the fourth wall suddenly becomes part of a bigger, scarier conversation about what it means to exist inside a comic. Darkseid lurks somewhere in the mix, and the tone promises to swing between nightmare and joke at any moment. It's Morrison Unleashed, which means prepare your brain to melt and laugh at the same panel. But the bonuses here are just as wild. DC has its own lineup of short backups from big names. Scott Snyder, James Tynion IV, Tom Taylor, Marco Tamaki, G. Willow Wilson. Basically, it's a who's who of modern DC storytellers. Their short mashups include Constantine tangling with Doctor Strange, Nightwing sparring with Laura Kinney Wolverine, Harley Quinn against the Hulk, and Static hanging out with Miss Marvel. Each is a few episodes long, but each is also meant to spark fans' imaginations. And because comics publishing in 2025 is as much about the cover, well as the interior story, both Marvel and DC are unleashing armies of variant covers tied to these mashups. If you thought your wallet wasn't safe, it isn't. Now, why are we getting 2 one-shots instead of a 4-issue mega event like the old days? The simple answer? Lawyers, money, and scheduling headaches. Joint events between Marvel and DC are famously difficult to pull off. Everything from who gets to distribute the books, to which editors approve which character's dialogue, to who owns the inevitable collection edition has to be negotiated. It's a nightmare. Splitting things into 2 one-shots, one by Marvel and one led by DC, solves a lot of that. Each publisher gets to control the tone of its own issue, highlight its own creators, and flood the market with its own collectible covers. At the same time, fans get the magic headline of Batman and Deadpool teaming up twice. It's less risk, more control, and still delivers spectacle. Think of it as fireworks. Short, loud, and designed to be memorable without overstaying their welcome. That dual book format also works because of who Batman and Deadpool are. Batman is trauma forged into discipline. He's obsessive, methodical, noir with a cape. Deadpool is chaos in human form. He's a blender filled with punchlines, regrets, and sharp objects, with the lid deliberately left off. Put them in the same book and you're guaranteed friction. Marvel takes leans into that friction by keeping the structures familiar. Gotham crime story, Joker stirring trouble, and of course Deadpool barging into Batman's shadows and refusing to shut up. Capullo's art sells the menace, Wells' script provides the comedy, and the result is a story that feels like an R-rated buddy cop movie shot on gothic backlots. DC's take, on the other hand, treats the same pairing as an excuse to deconstruct the very idea of a crossover. Morrison has always loved playing with the notion that characters know they're fictional, or that fiction itself is kind of a multiverse. Deadpool has been winking at readers for decades, so handing him to Morrison is like giving nitroglycerin to a demolition expert. Expect cosmic scale jokes, horror that doubles as commentary, and maybe even in the idea that Deadpool and Batman are reading us. Mora's art, slick and dynamic, is there to ground that madness in visuals that could pivot from slapstick to nightmare in a single panel. If Marvel's book's a buddy movie, DC's is a fever dream that happens to wear a cape. But this isn't happening in a vacuum. Intercompany crossovers have a lineage, and both publishers know it. Back in 1976, Superman fought Spider-Man in an oversized issue that showed readers these things could actually exist. In 1996, we got DC vs. Marvel and the Wild Amalgam experiment, where characters were literally mashed into the hybrids like Darkclaw, which is a mashup of Wolverine and Batman. And in 2003, JLA Avengers brought the two universes together in a prestige miniseries that treated both sides with reverence and scale. That one became a classic, in part because George Perez drew every character you could imagine with loving detail. Compared with those, the 2025 crossover is deliberately leaner. 2 issues instead of 4, no shared continuity, more emphasis on big-name creators and eye-catching covers. It's a modern strategy, less sprawling continuity, more curated spectacle. The backups also tell us something important. They're not filler. They're proof that the publishers want to show off creative talent and experiment with tone. Kevin Smith writing Daredevil and Green Arrow? That's nostalgia bait for fans who remember Smith's runs in the early 2000s. Chip Zdarsky writing Captain America and Wonder Woman? That's a test drive of how Marvel's moral compass might spar, or flirt, with DC's. Kelly Thompson and Garuru doing Jeff the Landshark and Crypto is the kind of cute chaos that'll dominate social media the day it drops. And Frank Miller drawing Old Man Logan versus Dark Knight Returns Batman is basically a mic drop aimed directly at the fandom's nostalgia centers. Each backup is a showcase, a conversation starter, and yes, a variant cover sales pitch. But on top of that, they give the one-shots a buffet feel, letting fans sample multiple pairings instead of just the headline act. Of course, there are risks. Tone is a fragile thing. If Deadpool's jokes overwhelm Morrison's cosmic dread, the DC issue could collapse into incoherence. If Batman's grim dark gravity crushes Deadpool's irreverence to the Marvel issue, it could feel joyless. Collectability might overshadow story. There are already whispers that some readers will buy these purely for the variants, never cracking the spine. And then there's the inevitable debate about whether these stories count. Crossovers like this often exist outside main continuity, which means some fans dismiss them as imaginary stories. The publishers seem to be leaning into that, especially with Morrison's metafictional approach. These aren't meant to reshape universes. They're meant to entertain, surprise, and let creators swing for the fences. So what makes this exciting instead of disposable? Intention. Both publishers stacking their creative lineups with names that matter. Zeb Wells and Greg Capullo know how to balance tone. Morrison and Mora thrive on blending reality. Add Frank Miller, Chip Zdarsky, Scott Snyder, G. Willow Wilson, and dozens of others, and you have a genuine festival of comic talents. When creators lean into what they're best at, instead of chasing continuity homework, you get stories that are weird, personal, and memorable. That's what makes this feel like an event worth caring about, rather than a corporate handshake. In the end, these 2 issues are playing tag with the same idea, but in different genres. Marvel delivers action comedy with noir grit. DC delivers philosophical horror with punchlines that might make you question your own existence. Together, they give fans 2 lenses on the same absurd pairing. Add in the backup buffet, the endless covers, and the sheer novelty of seeing Marvel and DC collaborate again, and you got something rare. It's been over 20 years since we had a crossover of this scale. Now, we get one that feels designed for the way comics culture actually works in 2025. Quick, loud, collectible, and very online. So buckle up. Batman and Deadpool are about to spend the fall of 2025 taking turns wrecking each other's universes, and we all get to watch. If you came for the novelty, you'll stay for the creators, and if you're wondering whether the Grim Knight and the Mark with the Mouth have any sense together, the answer is yes. They make sense in the only way comics ever really have, by being ridiculous, ambitious, and a little bit brilliant all at once. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.